Good afternoon, everyone. It's not good evening yet, so hang out with us. We're going to be as interactive as possible so you don't get bored or sleepy. It's been a long day, I'm sure. Thanks for joining us. What do you want to see? Here? Here? OK, maybe here. Whatever. Fine. Oh, wow. It's comfy. Hello. Still together? Good. All right, so we have, there you go. This is what you need to look at, guys. The timing is right there, so we have a timing there. So I'm very, very happy to be joined by our panel here. I just have to give a brief excuse one of our guys who's not on the panel here. Somebody who was supposed to join us from Deutsche Telecom, Guy. He is unfortunately sick today. Would have been interesting because he's the investor in the room. It would have been like the other side of the story. What we want to talk about today is a very interesting and a very controversial as well to some extent topic. It's about connectivity. Some of the guys in the panel before us, Christian moderating this, talked about connectivity, robotics, security, and everything else. I think we might be talking a little bit about that as well, but we want to take a different angle to it. So, it's a world of connectivity. I'm myself, supporting many different companies that have been, applying to our accelerator program on specifically on Internet of Things, on hardware-connected devices. It's been a roller coaster to see how many of those we've seen around the world. Very interesting technologies, and of course, on the back of our mind every single time, there's the question of security and ethical boundaries. So this is one of the topics that we'll be talking about today. But before getting into those things, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves. So, Maarten, you want to kick it off?
Hi, my name is Maarten Ectors. I'm a VP of IoT for Canonical. Canonical is the company behind Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a free open source operating system. It powers 70% of the cloud. And we also now have versions for the Internet of Things that can run app stores on almost any device.
Thank you. Asher, go ahead.
Asher Bennett. I'm the founder and CEO of Tevva Motors. We make extended range electric trucks. If you've noticed, our truck was just outside for the last 2 days. It was the orange truck. What is an extended range electric truck? At the core, it's an electric truck, so the only thing that turns the wheels is the electric motor and our lithium-ion batteries. You charge them at night. But the issue with trucks, they need to drive 10 hours a day, not like cars, 1.5 hours a day. And so we needed another solution. So we have up front a small auxiliary unit called as a range extender that can extend that range by a few hundred kilometers, and there are different technologies for that. Our truck is 100% fully connected, and not just for the sake of it, but there's a real reasons behind it, and we utilize it, and maybe I'll explain more as we go along.
Of course, yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah. So hi everybody, I'm Anthony Charbonnier, and so I work at Sigfox. My job there is quite nice, as I actually make it simple for all the startups who want to build something with our product. So my life is to make life easier for everybody, so that's cool. And so what Sigfox does is actually simple. We build and we deploy very low power, long range, and very cheap networks dedicated to IoT to make all the billions of things we talk about a reality. So we try to make that happen.
Great. Thank you, guys. So one of the things that we wanted to look into, of course, everybody's heard about IoT. Actually, who hasn't heard about IoT?
I can't hear.
I'm glad. This would have been a little bit embarrassing. OK, so pretty much IoT is everywhere these days. Well, we have, the numbers are flowing through for 2020, 34 billion, 120 billion. Every day you open a new presentation, a new Gartner report where they say IoT is going to be big. There's the hype curve of IoT when we see the progression, from up and down with different waves of different type of devices, from the wearable devices down to Internet of Things for the industrial world. And of course, the wave of evolution makes it sort of difficult to measure how many there is. One thing that was for sure is this is going to be a massive market. And it already is to some extent. So one of the topics that I wanted to address was, having an early bird's view on some of the trends that we see in the industry, some evolutions, and see where the future holds. And we want to be as concrete as possible, if you remember what we talked about. Let's not be too sort of high level, but get some real concrete examples. So, Maarten, you mentioned that, of course, you're part of Canonical. I don't know how many people know about Canonical, but maybe you can explain a little bit more about, open source and the things that the OS at Ubuntu does.
Yes, so basically, you have hardware and then you have software. But there's a layer in between, and that's the operating system. And that layer is very important for anything that you want to simplify. You don't want to go and make the software specifically for any hardware. So what we saw a couple of years ago is, for the cloud, let's open source something so that it all becomes easy for everybody to make something on the cloud. We saw that a couple of small startups in 2008 started using that, and now they're called Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, and so on. So this is what we try to do. We look at a hard problem, make some open source software, and let others build ecosystems on top, and we're doing exactly the same today for IoT.
Great. And I think you had actually some good examples talking about what we talked about earlier on, the hardware versus software and how you can finish that. So
this is a British invention for those that don't know it. It's the Raspberry Pi. It's basically $35. It was the hottest thing in 2015 for IoT. You can basically see this as a supercomputer as big as a credit card.
Who's played with Raspberry Pi already? Raise your hand if you already created something out of Raspberry Pi. Not enough, guys. Come on, you need to get on this.
OK, so this is a full computer. It's more powerful than the first Google servers, to give you some examples. But this is 2015. I brought today 2016, which is basically 3 of them now fit into here. And this is $8, this is $9 or $8, and this is $9. Basically, what we're going to is, like, in 1 year's time, things have come from this to this. So if you now think 2017, 2018, how big will it be? How powerful will it be? How cheap will it be? $35, $8, $9? It will probably be $1. It will probably be as big as a pound. So it will probably be cheaper to put a supercomputer from last decade into a hairdryer than to make any custom software. So what does that change? Well, software needs to be different, because you now will have 1,000 different things around your home or your business that have a supercomputer in there. We can't have the current paradigms, and we will have security problems if we do.
We'll go back to that in a minute. Anthony, we talked about the cost of hardware reducing. How about the cost of data and software?
Yeah, no, so that's a very good question that you mentioned about cost, because what we see in IoT is that we don't really care about the hardware. It's really painful for me as an hardware guy to say that, but what is very important is actually the cost of the data you get out of the hardware. How valuable is the data that you get? And this is a question that we have. So our goal is really to make it as cheap as possible for you to get this data. So in terms of hardware, connectivity, et cetera. And for us, this will drive the IoT numbers as we see them, as billions. If we can get, and we talk about $1, et cetera, I completely agree with that. If we can get these numbers to less than $1, connectivity include, it will actually fly. And we have like real-life examples. For example, this year we had a lot of requests to connect pallets, to actually transport stuff around. Who 3 years ago would have thought, I'm going to connect pallets because it makes sense from a business perspective? Nobody. Today, in 2016, we are able to create like $3 or $4 device that you can stick in a pallet and actually create a real-life business out of it, because it makes sense to know where they are, et cetera. So our goal is really to make that as cheap as possible regarding the whole stacks, from software, from cloud, et cetera, for you to be able to actually build another device that you want. And the other thing that we see is that we talk a lot about these billion devices. If the lower we do, the curve is exactly exponential. If you make it as low as possible, then you open a new range of actually new use case that you couldn't think about before. Think about, for example, is it actually nice to put like a device in a bottle, for example? Maybe or maybe not. But what is worth it is how valuable the data is that when somebody opens a bottle. If it's 1 cent to know that, maybe it makes sense for your company. So this is what drives us, actually, understanding how much the data is valuable and make it reality in the hardware, in the connectivity. And that's why, actually, we built Sigfox 6 years ago. We wanted a network which was cheap, as cheap as possible to connect this billion of things. So we were trying to do that every day.
So we spoke about the hardware, and we'll go back to that, of course. We spoke about the software side and the fact that you want to enable that. In the middle, of course, Asher is talking about real things and concrete stuff with the drivers, the truck, and everything. Do you want to give us, I think there's an interesting story that he had to show how important IoT can be at the core when you think about preventing what could happen.
So if I may, I'll explain why we use
Please do.
IoT. We made a decision when designing our truck, so there'll be 100% IoT. Every piece of information I can show you right now in the thing. Now, the main purpose we use it is we have 2 energy sources. And we can optimize, while driving along, through the cloud, which energy source is better to use. And if we ever have to use our range extender, we will always use it outside the city center by pre-planning, and the cloud is sending instructions to the vehicle what to do. It's completely autonomous. The driver doesn't control the energy system. But by being IoT, we have much more than that. So UPS has trialed our truck for 1 year. I'm happy to say we're now moving to production. That's very proud of that. We were once sitting in our office, and all the data was on our thing, and we suddenly saw that there's a potential fault with our UPS truck in the trials. We called UPS and said, you know, we think your truck is going to break down in an hour and a half. Please don't drive it on the motorway. We got in our cars. We start running after and trying to catch up the truck. We know where the truck is. We were using another IoT thing called Waze to call out the speed cameras, so we won't get, because we're an hour and a half away. We're getting closer and closer to the truck. The battery was going down to 3% battery, 2% battery. We weren't sure why it's driving, and it keeps running away from us. Anyways, we caught up with the truck. On the way, my guys completely deciphered the reason of the fault, so we knew it, but we couldn't fix it remotely. That'll be another future thing. My guy, we called up to the driver, please stop on the side. We jumped out. It took us 30 seconds. We fixed the truck, and it continued driving. UPS told us in the history of their company, a truck manufacturer had never called them to say that a truck will break down in an hour and a half. It's always a truck. It's broken down. Come in and save me.
So preventive maintenance is one of the things that we obviously want to be looking into. We've seen many different solutions in the industrial world, and this is a good example of a B2B concrete application that could potentially save lives, right? Rather than having the truck that goes off the road, you can identify it early on that there are some symptoms that you can prevent. And having a connected truck or having a connected device helps having those really information, the core of it. Now, I think we all understand there's a couple of key elephants in the room there. The first one is the data itself, right? It's great to have a shitloads of products out there and collecting data. If you don't do anything with it, it's a bit irrelevant, isn't it? So we might want to start talking a little bit about this. And the second one will be around security. So how about we start with what do we do with the data? How do we collect that data, but then what is the value of getting connected devices?
Yeah. So one of the biggest data sources that I've looked at is, for instance, security cameras. They're there the whole day. They just have high definitions. And now they're going to 4K quality, just like your television. So ultra-high definition cameras means it's 4 DVDs an hour. Any building here in London has at least 100 of them. Multiply that by the number of buildings in London, and you quickly understand that, like, even if Sigfox would find a way to transport it, it would be extremely expensive. So we're trying to see how can we get the needle in the haystack. How can we look at that data and do the real interesting thing? So we've been looking into things like face recognition. Can we see who is going around in the building, and are they allowed to be in the 5th floor and not allowed in the 7th floor? Also, is there hazardous information? If I fall down and I don't move for 30 seconds, I might want to take action and call a doctor. Or is there really a security issue? Somebody gets into the elevator, puts on a ski mask, gets a gun out. Well, at that moment, the elevator might decide not to open the door anymore, call the police, and have them come and take a look. So it's this type of information where just taking the face, where they were seen, and what time can be shared with the cloud, but not the 4 DVD raw data anymore, because it just doesn't add up. And probably he's now going to tell me that the amount of data a 4K camera generates is nothing compared to his truck.
Yeah.
It actually might be more. It's high definition. I'll give some real life data. So a normal UPS truck on a normal route or similar to we do would probably use 30 liters of fuel per day. When we handed over the truck, we used our battery to the maximum, but we sometimes had to use the backup generator to keep it to longer ranges, and we were using 10, 11 liters per day of fuel. Once we got the IoT systems on and predicting and doing the things, we're down to 1.7 liters a day. So from 30 liters to 1.7, and we're rolling out a feature that is part of this that will probably get down to 0 very soon. So it's mind-boggling, 94% savings in energy. It's only by the power of software or IoT. We have, yes, we have an issue of so much data. I have a background in video, so not the amount of high-definition recordings of lots of buildings, but it's a lot of data, and it's all about doing something about it, not just collecting it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at exactly what you do with the data, for us, it's actually all about it, because we talked about predictive maintenance before, and most of this come of just analyzing the data and to see when it's going to fail. I mean, your example on the truck is a really, really good example. That's what actually people dream about for tomorrow's machines, even for your dishwasher, for example. Tomorrow, if you connect it, you're going to be able to say when it's going to fail, when it's going to leak. And for an insurance company, for example, it's a huge market because they're not going to have to pay back you the money for it. So being able to tell you when it's going to fail is one of the biggest markets for tomorrow, and to avoid you some of these issues with fridges or whatever, for your good, but also for the industry. I mean, the other elephant in the room is the industry, and if you're able to save, I mean, for example, in France, we had a really dramatic accident a couple of years ago, about this train which killed some of the people because they didn't maintain enough the rail. It was a bit sad, and so tomorrow it will be, a story of how sensors actually will tell you, be careful, this rail is going up, you should check it, and as you did with the truck, you go there before it actually fails to prevent some of this kind of stuff. And all of this come out of how you analyze the data, how you analyze the pics, and how you actually see the faults in it. So for us, it's a very, very big key.
Something you said before, you add IoT to pallets.
Yep.
Now, one of the things we need as a truck is to predict the different payloads during the day. So right now, we accept the payload data from the logistics systems of the company, but we could do much better. The actual payload will be telling our truck what it is, and we readapt our energy calculations based on that.
You guys, this is real business on stage
Yep.
right there.
We didn't prepare that.
Who'll buy you, which company? Yours or mine?
I don't know. We are a small startup still, so.
So I think we've talked about a few key examples on the industrial side. I want to just mention one other example, not on the industrial side, but on this sort of the more the consumer element, but which goes along the way of what we just discussed. So in one of our companies, we have a wearable device, which is something that I haven't been really keen in looking into wearables because it's been a little bit overdone. You could see Pebble lately hasn't been done a really good job at selling themselves. But we have a wearable for horses. The company called Crouan, and basically what they do is exactly this. They try to prevent first and identify first signs of sickness, disease, fatigue of the horses. And I don't have to tell you how much a horse can cost. Of course, this is a lot of saving that goes into this, in addition to saving the pain of having an animal that goes bad. And this is an exact example of saving a lot of cost, saving a lot of pain just through small sensors. Yeah.
By the way, horses were the motor of trucks from 100 years ago.
Exactly.
So somehow.
Revert back to that.
And I was talking to them, and I was asking, why don't you do more with the data? Because basically, you could gamify it. You could have things where, hey, you jump higher with this horse than anybody else, so you are in a higher category. So it's all these type of things of what did you do with your horse? Can I share that on Facebook? Am I a good rider or not? So at the end, what happens there is that if I go to you and you all have horses and you and I are connected and I go, I'm a 7, and you go I'm a 6, and they go you're what? Then we go oh yeah, you must be less. Because if you don't have a number, you don't exist. So this is where you get this whole social event of they will be running to buy those horse sensors. And this is where also IoT can make things sticky and make things into the new craze. And we've all seen what happens with the Pokemon Go wild. You cannot predict what the next thing is.
So on that topic, which I think everybody agrees is one of those new trends on the market is how do we get all connected in the future, right? Because connecting things is indeed, fairly easy to imagine. You have a different device that could have a couple of sensors. What about the humans? How do we get connected? And that's, we are all connected. What is next is the title of the panel. So how do we address the first, the health, second, the ethics boundaries that we obviously going to have to look into, and third, the security aspect behind it. So just to give a bit of context, the latest trends that we saw, actually last January in CES, CES is this big convention in Vegas every year. This is Consumer Electronics Show, where you tend to see quite a number of trends coming from around the world of new devices. And of course, most of the people are looking towards CES to identify the new trends in the market. And when it comes to IoT, this is one of those big shows. Well, one of the trends last year was to how do we evolve from personal wearables into the next generations. And two of the topics that we were talking about, quite scary when you think about it, were what they call the ingestibles or internables. So it speaks for itself that the minute you start getting inside the body or touching, more than just on the skin on the outside, this whole sort of ethical debate that, kicks off. Now, we all need to understand this is unavoidable. It's going to happen, whatever you want to do about it. And it's already happening, right? Many research are going through. There's some specific very smart pills that are already existing and been distributed by some of the medical cabinets and stuff. So we need to be prepared for this. Now, of course, one of our job as part of those guys in the industry is to identify how we can secure that as much as possible, and how can we address those topics heads on rather than just being too late. It's happening kind of thing. Yeah. So do you want to have a quick go at that? Anthony, what's your view on that?
So for me, one of the feedback we had from this kind of stuff is that if you want to connect humans or whatever, it has to be completely transparent. Like it has to be completely, for you don't even know it exists. It just happens. And so one of the main thing, and that's, I think, you mentioned the size of these things, etc. What we're going to see next is really something that you don't notice anymore. That you can put somewhere in your jacket, for example, to secure your kid. He goes through school. He has like a really tiny stuff in his jacket to know where he is with his GPS position, for example, just to be secure, etc. So, one of the trends we see is to be able to connect whatever, not about all the humans, whatever you wear and whatever, actually on you as well. But it has to be completely transparent for you. It has to be kind of magical a bit. If it is a pain for you, you're going to reject it, like your body would do it, because then it's a problem for you. It doesn't have the value that we talked about before. And so for us, the really key is to make it transparent. If you want to connect the body, make it completely painless and transparent. And the other topic you mentioned is health. And we talk a lot about health issues, about all these networks, etc. And this is something you should be careful when you overconnect yourself. But you have various solutions for that. So making it transparent and useful. And actually, this is which will actually work.
Maarten?
Yeah, so where we're looking is like, how can we save lives? How can we use IoT and make social and healthcare systems sustainable? So one of the things that you can easily imagine is if you have a health kit, either at home or in the less developed parts of the world in a village, they could be remotely seeing what's wrong. They can see and diagnose by some of the best specialists that might be somewhere 2,000 kilometers away. So health kits can really help to go and look at all the diagnostics and see if this is just a cold or if this is something very important. And you shouldn't think about a health kit necessarily as an appliance that you put in a village specifically. If you think about it, you could have a vending machine that you can buy some tubes and connect to it, and you have a screen and a camera, and you could even pay the doctor remotely and go there. So you can redefine how you interact with the medical staff completely. And then you could go to the other extreme. What if we start open sourcing MRI scanners? What if we don't produce them anymore? We just define, this is a good design of an MRI scanner. Let's put it on GitHub. Let's have everybody in Taiwan, China, and whatever, cost optimize it to make MRI scanners cheap. Why would I want to do that? Because I would lose all this revenue on the hardware. Well, perhaps you don't, because if you put an app store on there, and you could have apps let's say, 5,000 algorithms to look at my body and to find early signs of cancer before there's anything physically showing it, I'd be willing to pay some money every year for that scan. And perhaps if I live in a part of the world where I'm not able to afford that, just donating my data for others to do research on would give the hospital money. So at the end, that MRI scanner might cost 10 times less, 100 times less than the current MRI scanners. A lot more hospitals can have it, and we can use it to proactively find cancer when it's easy to cure. That's the type of thing where I think we can use IoT to really save lives.
Okay. I think I like the idea. We just don't need to scare people off just yet on how much we're going to be having MRI scanned everyone. I want to transition slightly. I mean, there's a couple more topics that we want to discuss on. Security is one of them, but we'll go back to that in a minute. I think I want to talk about one of the enabling technologies that is coming through our world right now, which is artificial intelligence. Of course, you know, it's a key topic that we cannot avoid, and I find that artificial intelligence is very quickly becoming an enabling technology for IoT as well, devices. Now, maybe on the consumer side, it seems quite scary still, but then on the industrial side, and particularly we were talking about autonomous vehicle before, you know, this is one of the trends at the moment, saying, you know, are we going to get auto-driving trucks in the future? How do you see that?
Well, in my opinion, in general, the technology for autonomous vehicles is pretty much there.
Yep.
I think society has to catch up to it and agree to it, and that'll happen over the next few years. There is a wonderful company called Otto that was focusing on trucks and autonomous driving, but they were focusing on the highway autonomous driving, which is one of the easier things to do. On the highway, it's very easy to have autonomous driving. Slowly and slowly, you will have to get into urban and trucks autonomous driving. So we're installing in our trucks. So one of the problems is our trucks are quiet. So we have detection systems that there are humans or bicycles, and we make a little noise to not crush them, to not have a crash. So yeah, on those kind of things, we're going in that direction. Trucks will most probably be autonomous driving, but they'll still have a person to load and unload. Following the former thing they talked about robotics, yes, that will get out of the way as well, but it'll be step by step. And the biggest problem in driving is the driver. Once you can get him out of the equation, the safety goes up. Drivers don't have to have mandatory rest all the time, which really limits this very expensive asset as a truck. And you can't use it because the driver has to take rest and rest periods in limited times.
Yeah. Guys, have you seen any impact from artificial intelligence on your business already?
Yeah. I mean, for example, we connected our solutions to IBM Watson, for example.
Right.
And why we did that is that a lot of artificial intelligence, it was actually historically just scripting. They will answer to a certain type of scripting and act on something, a behavior that we taught them. Intelligence in something, reacting to something they don't know, and they learn about it. This is very, very complex. And for our sensor world, when you have a lot of data coming up and some new events that they don't know, artificial intelligence is very, very important because they could behave a sensor or whatever, learning from this event. And for example, from agriculture, I've been discussing a lot with African guys about all the agriculture systems, and they can predict quite well how to put water in the field very easily with sensors, etc. Not a problem. But as soon as there is an extra event, for example, a really, really big dry or something not usual, they couldn't do it. With artificial intelligence, they could be able to do that because the system will be able to tell, okay, this is completely unconventional, but I know it. I know I learned, and I'm going to say it. And this is, for us, from our sensor world again, very, very important. You need to feed it with data, of course, first. We come up from the beginning, but it's very, very important if you really want to act on the data we get.
Okay, Maarten?
Yeah, so deep learning, which is what drives a lot of the things today, is hard to train. And then once you have a model, you can then take it and on the edge. And that's exactly where we're working. We're trying to make this training super simple, open sourcing tools together with the Googles of this world on like, hey, this is how you train this. And then once you have the model, this is how you use it. And a lot of our customers are using deep learning for all types of things. So I don't think there's, at this moment, any self-driven car that would keep on driving if we shut off our operating system. And I'm a deep believer that like I will have in my lifetime a button that I click and a self-driven drone will come and pick me up and drop me somewhere off. So it's like, this is where we're going. It's not only cars, but it will be planes and drones and everything will be self-driven or self-flying in that case. And this deep learning is really, really special, but even farmers could like use it. Because if you think about it, how many small-scale farms you don't have where like the 75-year-old grandmother knows how to classify cucumbers into 10 classes. But the kids don't like to do that 12 hours a day. They're like, don't see the future in there. So this is where like you would put a camera, you would put some open source and see how grandmother does it. You would then suggest to grandmother if it's rightly done, and she would often say no. And then over time, you will be able to do it as good as she does and automate it. Because there's a lot of these jobs that like aren't difficult to automate, which then allows you to focus on the bigger value on top.
So I want to give another example on artificial intelligence, because we spoke about business cases, we spoke about the impact on the people. The education piece is, for me, something actually important as well. And we have a company called Woogie who creates this very nice-looking alien life form who is targeting the children market for education. Basically, what it is, it's a small device that allows the kids to talk to and interact with and get to learn more things depending on what module you can put in there. Basically, learning more about math, learning more about history, learning more about the day, learning more about the news. Now, behind that is a key concept of controlling the information. Now, clearly, artificial intelligence enables those devices, and of course, they are connected, which makes them Internet of Things devices, because they can relay the information, collect the data, and everything. But there's at the core of that the real key question of making sure that we, because you're targeting, child's and kids' market, that there is a certain element of control on that. So it goes back to the same topic that we had before: is how do you manage the security? What's the barrier? What's the limitation on getting all things connected? What is the risk, and how can we control it?
Yeah. Well, the biggest risk we've seen some weeks ago, and those are the botnets, ransomware, and so on. We don't want to go in a world where like the car picks you up, you're on the highway, you're going at 100, and then there's some ransomware coming in and saying, either you pay me 10,000 in Bitcoin or I crash you. That's not the type of thing where we want to go to. But by default, our manufacturers aren't used to it. They ship cameras with a default password, and then you can make a virus and go in and reprogram them. Like you now buy IP cameras, you connect them to the internet, and within a minute, they will be infected. So you might not even have the time to change the default password before they're infected. So security is incredibly important. And what we are actually working on makes it even worse, because we assume that like people are going to run code and apps on top of all types of devices, even the MRI scanners or self-driven cars or whatever. So we take it extremely serious. We assume code is a criminal until proven innocent. Mm-hmm. We go to very far length to contain it, to make sure that like if it goes out, it cannot harm the other apps or the other operating system. And the biggest problem that most people don't realize is one of the things that Snowden brought to everybody's attention is that there's lots of code in the world that nobody has looked on for the last 10 years, except for the NSA. And they found that like they would pick certain problems and would make ways to inject code into a running system without that system even knowing that somebody came in. So those type of things have ballooned. We've seen that in last 4 years, you had like 4 years ago, you had 5 of those type of issues that were like half critical or very critical. We now see over 200 each year. And each of them would like allow people to take access to a device, even if your application on top would be secure. So this is where we invest very heavily into automatically updating things as well. Because if you can't update it, you have a lot of modems in your house, broadband modems. The telcos send an update, and then they pray. If it goes wrong, they have to send the truck to replace it. So in that type of world, you're not going to every day send an update. You're only going to do it if it's really critical. What happened the other day in Germany? Deutsche Telecom had one of those, and almost all of Germany went flat. So we need to make things transactionally updatable so that if I update and it goes wrong, it can also be rolled back. So this is the type of things that we're trying to make, that like software can then be built on top that is contained and secure, and you can go and deploy new things. We will automatically fix those low-end things and so on. And that's what we try to do.
I want to go back to the truck thing. Yeah, because how do you enable your trucks? And
How do I what?
How do you make sure those trucks are secure? What's the layer there?
So first of all, the importance of secure of trucks is there's a huge amount of value inside what our trucks are moving around, okay, especially before Christmas. And so it is of top priority to be secure. Frankly, as a company, even though software is our strong side, we don't do everything. So we buy external security solutions, currently 2 layers. Not saying we can't improve on it, but we'll say, and we buy the solutions and implement them. And then we can show to our customers that your data is secure. You wouldn't believe how many trucks are out there that they detect. People put GPS trackers on the truck. You know, just stick it on as a magnet somewhere so they can follow the truck. And they keep finding it, our customers keep finding it. So the last thing we need is for them to hack into our system, see where the truck is, know where the truck is going, control the energy system to make it inefficient or stop. But that's how we solve it. Just because the security companies in the IoT space, and that's what we use.
Well, there's a lot of those, of course, but it's about making sure that.
And I'm not going to tell you which one we use, sorry.
What about you, Anthony?
No, so what when we look at security, we also look at it at security by design. I mean, if we look at the problems we got in the last week, and we mentioned the botnets, like, if you ask yourself, why in hell would I need a web server on a camera? Like, why do I need that? I mean, I will use it once just to set it up, and because of that, I'm gonna get a really big flaw in my whole system. So why do you need it? When we say, so basically security by design, I mean, do you need to talk to this object? Do you really need to talk it? Or do you just want to use the data, actually driven out of this object? If your device is actually deaf, if it can't hear what you're selling, I mean, it's very secure because you can't actually access it from outside world. So, to be honest, from our side, our objects and the view we have is a bit different because our objects can't be accessed from outside world, so you can't really hack them. So from security perspective, it's really secure by design. And that's really important because, I mean, again, if we'd have web server and an IP address for every single device connected on Earth, we would have a big problem because today it's what, 500,000 cameras. Tomorrow, if everybody had a web server inside, it would be billions of objects. So, in 1 second, they could take down the whole internet. So we have to be careful when we deploy this object to make sure they are secure, and also by design that, if you don't need to actually access them, just don't make them accessible. So that's very important to take that into account first thing. And we just come back to what you said before about stuff that you can, put in your body. It has to be safe. It's your own body. So, for all these kind of use cases, it has to be perfectly secure. And again, from a software perspective, we all know everything can be hacked. So be careful and put a bit more security, not only on software.
Guys, we're down to 5 minutes left. I want to know if there is any question in the audience. I'd be happy to have some microphone distributed. Anyone has a question for the panel? Don't be shy. No? OK. So we can keep on going for 5 more minutes. I mean, there's so much more we can discuss about. You sure? Last call? Okay.
Just one point on security.
Please go.
We have a complete backup system that if our internet connection cuts out, the truck will always drive. It'll always do its job. It won't stop. It'll just be less efficient, but it'll get its job done if there's a connectivity loss or we detect a security issue.
Okay.
That's a very good point. When I talk to a lot of people that are designing IoT, they see the world as like a button, a light, and the cloud. And then they think like, okay, I click the button, it goes to the cloud, and then it goes back and switches on the light. But think about a car. Would you really want something to go to the cloud, do some calculations, and then go like, oh, I need to put the brake on? You don't. But a lot of people are designing it that way. You need that autonomy. You need to be able, in emergencies, and when your internet is down, to switch on your light. So the IoT is all about these sensors, these actuators, the cloud, but also smart devices that can take a decision that if there's a camera that has a web server that is not secure, let's isolate it from the rest, and so on. So I see this world of like, in those 4 categories, and if you're going to design any IoT solution, you should probably think that like you don't want to be in a world where you click a button and the light doesn't go on when the internet is gone.
Autonomous thinking, right? Which is where the local node versus the connectivity is important to have. Yeah, for sure. We can close on a few more topics. One of the things that is right now scaring people off is twofold. One of them is, Maarten, you mentioned earlier, not in the panel because it's kind of controversial. There's a website, if you guys don't know it, which is called the Internet of Shit, really. Which is where basically some people are collecting the entire planet of useless devices, connected devices. And there's a lot. You know, the smart kettle is the first one that probably was popped up on the planet, but there's tons and tons and tons more. Have a look, it's quite funny. But now, what we want to get away from that particular sort of reality is that, you know, connecting everything might not be relevant. But connecting things to make a difference is what we're looking for, right? We talked about health, we talked about changing lives, we talked about autonomous vehicles, we talked about preventing maintenance, saving costs, down the line probably all about money, but it really is an industry that is looking after the change and the impact. And even though I would love to think that every single company in the world is really completely you know, not interested in money, just the pure gold of their hearts. Fortunately, not the case. We are lucky enough to work with a lot of people that are looking into that impactful type of technologies that is going to be put on the market. So can you guys maybe give one example of a solution, and I'm taking you by surprise here, by the way, but one example of a solution that you think that is connected and make an impact, according to you?
One solution. Well, I'm going to go a step backwards. So what we are trying to do is let anybody run their own app store. So anybody can build that one solution and determine what goes on there. So whatever you're working on, put an app store on there and sell things. And I think you will be the one telling me what that great solution will be.
Okay.
We are connecting real live pollution hotspots around wherever, live. And we, based on that, we can change our algorithm of energy efficiency. So this area will be zero emission, and we'll do the range extender elsewhere. But we need to take it to a bigger level. Every car should be connected. I mean, if there's something that has to be connected, is that every car should be connected. Every car should know where it's going, and then you get a message, well, don't drive there, we'll pay you £1, or alternative, if you drive there, it's going to cost you an extra £2. To real live make an actual change in emissions and traffic. Traffic is emissions, by the way. When you're standing in traffic, you're making emissions.
Yeah.
Not our truck, by the way. Zero emissions ones, but most of the things like that.
Hopefully we'll get away from petrol and we get actual real no emission things. What about you, Anthony?
So yeah, I mean, you saw my job, right? I work with startup at Sigfox, so I get a lot of people coming at me with crazy ideas. Some of it, I shouldn't say it, but are clearly should go on Internet of Shit website, let's be honest. But on the other side, actually, what we think is that IoT will provide a complete new range of stuff to understand our world better. You know, the fact that we can, as you say, put a lot of pollution sensor everywhere, put the data in open source. We can build on top of that, for example, algorithm on bike system, which will make you take the best itinerary, avoiding all the pollution, for example. So this is just one part. We are working on forest sensor, that you put sensors on trees, because they are so cheap and they can run years on battery. that you can detect fires, for example. So making stuff so cheap and so nice that you can actually prevent fire for us. All of these kind of small sensors, they can make a difference. And again, it's a big word, but we have to understand our world to actually make it better and optimize it. And this is what I think really a lot of small sensors will actually help us to make. So for me, we get a lot of crap. We see a lot of crap coming, but we don't have to put all of this in this field. A lot of stuff coming are very useful and will help us to, to grow a world and to tackle some of the problems we have. So let's see what's come next, but I'm quite excited, as you can see. So
Great. And on that note, I want to close on saying, because we're just having that big red light saying we're over time now, I want to close on saying, guys, don't be afraid. This is going to be a connected world, whether you want it or not, but embrace it. There's so much coming that's going to be helping us down the line. We have associations around the world that are looking into this. Tech Fuji is one of them I want to mention, for example, trying to tackle the refugee crisis through technology. And what they do is literally using some of the technology we talked about to help region of the world and people that are not lucky enough to be able to come here and being connected and understand what we do. So again, IoT is here to help us all. Join the movement. Feel free to create a company and come to us here if you're interested. Thank you very much for sticking with us.